All right. This is our session that is based on the document, What is Revolutionary Intercommunalism and Why We Embrace It. As comrades know, there was a recent separation between us in the Revolutionary Intercommunal Black Panther Party from the new African Black Panther Party, based on a struggle against two of the members, leading members, who refused to submit to criticism. They didn't want to allow internal party democracy to operate, and essentially they liquidated the entire outside membership of the party. So the comrades reconstituted the party as the Revolutionary and Communal Black Panther Party and essentially purged those two members. And with having done that, we want to establish or reestablish the foundational ideology of the party and the principles on which we organize and base our struggle politically, which is revolutionary intercommunalism. So we felt it essential to reestablish and make clear, for everyone what the basis of revolutionary intercommunalism is and why we embrace this line. So that is what we're working with this week, and I want to begin by allowing the comrades to chime in. What do the comrades understand the basis of revolutionary intercommunalism to be? Why is the world in a condition where it is different from what has been in the past, where national liberation struggles are not an answer to the struggle against the conditions that exist now? And why is revolutionary communalism something different and more appropriate to the existing conditions?
Can I try?
Yes.
So I think personally that the theory of revolutionary intercommunalism is important because the old way of waging revolution via the national liberation struggles have proved the situation has just changed. Considering that there are no real nation states anymore of America imperialism. America is an empire. So just because we can escape, just because we can seemingly escape to a different nation, does that mean we're free from the touches of, capitalist imperialism? So, is more applicable to our current situation. And even when we look at national liberation struggles, it's like we can see this in practice, because even though, especially nations in Africa, even though they've got their quote unquote independence, they got their own flag, they're still being ruled by, neo-colonial powers like the black face at the top, but they're still being controlled by capitalism.
Comrade Rashid?
Yes.
I think Garlic touched on a really important point. Can you speak a little bit, though, to maybe the people who are going to be listening to this who aren't familiar? Can you speak a little bit about reactionary intercommunalism, or what we understand as globalization, to kind of give some clarity?
Very much so. Okay, the structure of the world as it exists under American domination, what we understand as reactionary intercommunalism, is a structure where American dominates everybody. They have pretty much linked the whole world economy.
Rashid, yeah. We're getting that feedback again. We're getting that feedback.
Okay.
I think that's it. Yeah, that's better.
Okay. The world as it exists now, the structure of the world economically, is one where America dominates the entire structure, where a small group of people control the world's wealth, control the communication systems, media, technology, the transfer of wealth, in such a way that all of the world's communities, of all the societies in the world, are linked together, where the wealth is extracted, it's reallocated, it's redistributed so that only a small group of people are able to reap the benefits from the system, but everything is interconnected. There is no longer a condition where any society of people can break away from the system and exist independently, because all of the institutions that control the economies locally, all of the exchanges of wealth, the distribution of wealth is all tied together in one global system. So that if anybody did attempt to extract themselves from the system as it exists, they would basically be isolated because they wouldn't be able to trade, to gain access to things that they're not able to produce efficiently or produce a surplus of in the regions that they live in. So that it's basically a system where if, say, for example, people who are living in some region in Africa, if they try to fight and separate themselves from being dominated by capitalist systems that extracts their wealth and sends it to America to be used in, say, producing computers, and some parts are produced in China, some parts are produced in Indonesia, etc., it would be impossible for them to break away because they would not be able to trade the goods that are produced locally. Say it may be certain natural minerals that are used in that area of technology. They could not access certain food items. They could not access certain textiles, etc., because they would be blocked out of a global economy. They would be blocked out of being able to access what other countries produce or other regions produce that they cannot produce themselves. So the populations would essentially starve and, go without basic necessities, whereas they're already deprived to a great extent. They would be basically pushed out of the system, and they would not be able to defend themselves from being imposed upon by American domination, American military power, or the power of one of the sub-imperialist countries acting in the interest of America. So the whole system is hooked up where nobody can liberate themselves from being subjected to being dominated by a small group of people or a small group of political and economic interests, and everything is working to the interests of this small group of people. And this is what we understand to be reactionary intercommunalism. And I think Comrade Shapavu, we had a conversation once where she was describing how by actually working within an institution that relies on communications that are spread out across the world. In India, the corporation may be based in America, but they use people who operate like a call service in India. And she sees how where the corporation may be based in one place, it depends on labor spread out all across the world. And she said it actually demonstrated to her how this whole reactionary intercommunalism really operates, that there are no locally based institutions. Everything is basically based on use of wealth, use of labor, etc., spread out across the world. And if you would, I would like you kind of give a description of what you experienced, Comrade Shapavu, when you explained to me how this illustrated to you how reactionary intercommunalism really is a real system.
Yeah, so
Does someone
I work
have a deaf speaker?
Yeah, somebody needs to mute. So what Rashid was talking about is I work as an insurance agent. That's like how I pay my bills and stuff for the last 10 or so years. In the private sector, in the government sector, that's how I've worked as an insurance specialist or agent or producer, whatever. And my most recent position is with a multinational company that was a tech startup in San Francisco, and then they spread to India. And basically, everyone who works for this company that I work for now works out of their home, and each little piece of the corporation is located somewhere around the world, and we all work together to produce, what our clients need, whether they're certificates of insurance, different binders and things like that. But it really impressed upon me.
You have 1 minute remaining.
Oh, Susan. It really impressed upon me how this rise of globalization or reactionary intercommunalism is really a real thing. I remember when I first started discussing this with Rashid, and I just couldn't. I was came from a political background that was revolutionary, nationalist, or had some internationalist leanings, and I was really, for subjective reasons, one to that line, and it was really hard for me to let go of that. But working in this new position, I'm seeing reactionary communalism at play within my own life. When I go to work each day and I log onto my computer, and my comrades are in India and they're producing one piece of the project, and I've got people, in Mexico who are doing another part of a project I may be working on, and then I've got people in San Francisco and Chicago, and all these things work together. And so, yeah, that was the conversation that we had.
Thank you for using GTL.
It just really impressed upon me how, it's a real thing. No nations really operate individually anymore. And that was something that was really hard for me to wrap my mind around when Rashid, would first talk to me about this. But it's really true. Like, there's really no way as a nation to just drop out of this, to say, to wage some national struggle for independence and not have to play this game in some way, because America and its sub-imperialist, countries and allies, it's literally a global empire. It's a global empire that everything is connected together, and those countries that aren't hooked up into it some kind of way, they're starved out. So that's what really made it clear to me. I don't know if anybody else had anything to offer before Rashid calls back in.
Can I say something? This is Hansi.
Hey, Hansi.
How you doing? Shapal? How you doing, guys? I wanted to say that during my recent stay somewhere out of this country, in the Dominican Republic, I also saw the large proliferation of call centers. And a lot of the people, actually, the tropes and stereotypes of people that work in the call centers, stereotypes are backwards, but I feel like they have, it shows something. I feel like because. So it's people that are deported from here, and then they go to those third world countries, and then they offer those services, and it's really like they just pay them like nothing. So when they would see me, and they would see certain comrades that I went with, they would like I didn't go to school, but like I don't even have an associate, but my other comrades, like they got masters and everything. And somebody said, "I'm sorry, I'm going," but I think it's important. They thought that somebody said the first day we were there that this comrade that I used to frequent, she said they said that she looked like basically like a working class, like like a hood person. Like how is she an academic that goes to panels that went to 2 Ivy Leagues? Like she looks like she's from the hood. She looks like she works in a call center. I thought I should bring that dynamic because the deportation is important with all this. I'm sorry.
Okay. Do other comrades have any examples that kind of tie into showing how existing industries or existing corporations and job systems are globalized, that different parts of them operate in different countries in different regions of the world to work together to carry out a certain function?
I mean, I don't think my example is going to be like that good, but I was thinking about how a lot of tech companies use resources from a lot of the countries in the global south to build different devices such as like iPhones or like tablets or whatever. And so it's very common for countries like the US and other like European countries to like exploit these countries in order to produce a lot of the things that we use today.
Yeah, actually, that's a good illustration because the labor, the assembly may be done in one area. You may have a factory or a plant inside of the United States somewhere. Then the resources that are, extracted that produce them may come from parts of Africa like the Congo, where they keep the society destabilized so that they can extract the cobalt, the nickel, copper, other basic minerals. They can extract them cheaply and then, export them to other areas where they're worked up into the parts and components that are used to make the iPhones and laptops, that sort of thing. So the entire process is, spread out in many different places so that nothing is done, in one area, or the labor is not concentrated in one place as it may have been in times past. The industries operate, across the entire planet, and then the communication systems that keep them operating are also spread out. So, can you all give me some ideas how this operates to undermine the development of, or undermine the existing, the traditional, I'm not saying existing, but the traditional system of the industrial workers who may have been inside of the United States back, before the 60s. Can you give me some ideas how the system as it is now pretty much undermined the system that may have existed before the onset of reactionary intercommunalism, when you had large-scale industries like in what is now the Rust Belt in America, when you had a lot of factories up in Pennsylvania, that sort of thing?
I mean, those industries really, in a lot of those areas, especially the Rust Belt, have been killed, and a lot of those people are battling with unemployment. Some of them like permanent unemployment, like the series speaks to, in fact.
Exactly, and a lot of those jobs were exported to other regions of the world where the labor could be exploited more cheaply, and it could be distributed on a broader basis in more than one region, so that people who are desperate for work or desperate for resources or driven off of their land and other, in other countries and rural areas, they have to work at extremely cheap rates without any sorts of protections, under extremely dangerous conditions, to work up the component parts and the goods that are then sold and distributed across the world again on a globalized, within a globalized economic system. So, can you give me some illustrations as to how this process has led to pushing a lot of the rural people, traditional rural farmers and peasants, off of their land?
Can you guys hear me?
Is that in the context of this country or everywhere in the world?
Typically across the world, most of where peasants were, you had the underdeveloped regions of the world, like in Africa, Asia, South America, Central America, these regions, underdeveloped regions of the world.
So I've heard that in Peru, one of the communities that had the most radical resistance, like with the Maoists, was they were like favela type of urban areas that were composed of peasants that came from the countryside that were displaced and dispossessed because of the advance of technology and and the theft of land.
That keys right into exactly what you were talking about. Oh, go ahead, Thomas.
what I'm not sure of the source of where I got the information, so I apologize. But I recall hearing that in order to keep the larger plantations going, or larger farm industries going that are basically the larger companies, they will actually destroy the rural small farmers' crops in order for theirs to if they wouldn't agree to participate. I watched some type of economic movie where it kind of showed how if you didn't choose to participate and be a part of their global grain in a sense, then they would start to destroy your crops by way of spraying certain pesticides that would kill your crop in order for theirs to be the dominant crop, if you didn't agree to be a part of their exploitational farming versus your small rural farming. So if you didn't join the crew, so to speak, then they would either outsource you by way of destroying your crop or making it, kind of blacklisting you where you can't participate in certain arenas because you're a smaller farmer and you're not willing to get down with, putting certain poisons in your food or growing your food a certain way or even doing certain inhumane things to the animals. And they were basically pushing you if you didn't agree with that. So.
Again, that's a very good illustration. And this is how the existing system has consolidated itself and has grown by, in fact, through high-tech agribusiness driving, the traditional small-scale farmers and peasants off of their land, forcing them to, become a part of the existing agribusiness system. And if they don't, as you have stated, they will, force them off the land and take over the land, or they will leave the land in fallow because, they have, they're extracting minerals from the land, or they'll just leave the land without being developed because, they have so much land that they are already using. And it's like when they drain the resources from other regions, then they're to, turn their productions over into the fallow land and then use that land until they leach that land of all of its resources and, cause desertification like they've done across regions of, sub-Saharan Africa. And it's just a completely destructive system. It destroys the existing survival institutions for the everyday people, working people, rural people. It destroys the natural environment, and overall, it places the dominant class who controls the global empire in an absolute contradictory relationship with everybody else on the planet. And this is what is a driving factor in the need to create what we call revolutionary intercommunalism, which is the struggle that will turn these resources, these interconnected institutions of control over to the masses of people so that they are able to exercise power on an intercommunal basis and through that struggle achieve, a world or a global system of proletarian socialist revolution. So let me ask the comrades, when we speak of intercommunal revolutionary struggle or developing struggle on an intercommunal basis from community to community, do any of you have an idea how this process looks or how this process would work?
I can give it a shot. Oh, you can go next, comrade, if you.
Okay, can you hear me? Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Oh, sick. Okay. I would think that tactic will be, started off with creating base areas, in relation to how Mao did it in China, but also creating these base areas in our respective parts of the world, and then staying in close contact, and and trading our resources and our strategy, and using that approach to initiate revolutionary intercommunalism.
Okay. Um, let's look at it this way. Okay, one of the key factors or one of the key results of the system that has driven massive numbers of people out of secure employment in the established or traditional industries, and then is driving massive numbers of people off of the land in the rural areas, is that it's forcing people to migrate to areas that are becoming increasingly urbanized. So you have huge concentrations of people that have been driven off of the land and can't find sustainable employment. They're pushed into urban regions or regions that are urbanized where they cannot find work, they cannot survive through the traditional, labor system. So they're forced to survive by resort to all sorts of hustles, and through, in many cases, preying on other people. So the problem is you don't have the means of providing these people options to survive that have existed traditionally, throughout history, which is, growing, farming, rural areas, or working in, factories, or working in traditional employment. So the struggle is now to devise a way to help these people survive while at the same time giving them means of taking control over the institutions where they live so that they can become empowered politically, economically, and ultimately be able to strike a blow to overthrow the oppressive system that has put them in this condition. And this is the whole strategy that is the basis of what the Revolutionary Intercommunal Black Panther Party is about. Our objective is to create what we call serve the people programs, or what the original Black Panther Party called, quite correctly, survival programs, where we're able to pull together resources and empower the people in these types of environments, whether you're talking about, the urban ghettos, whether you're talking about shanty towns, whether you're talking about regions where people have immigrated or migrated to, that are, essentially refugee camps, these sorts of areas where people are concentrated in huge numbers. We have to create institutions. We have to create programs where they can get access to basic survival necessities. And by doing so, also empower them to create what is called dual power, where they're able to transform these into actual means of survival, economic structures that are sustainable, that they're able to create, that will be able to provide the people in the areas the basic necessities, that will be able to, through the organizations that we lead, develop political power and develop, an entire structure for educating them to understand their place in the oppressive system, why conditions exist as they do, and how to struggle to change the conditioning of the people, both materially and their understanding of the conditions that they live under. So this is the whole basis of Serve the People program. And from one region to another, or one community to another, liberating people and being able to link them together, link their struggles together, where one area is able to develop Serve the People programs to meet the needs of a local community, then they can also transfer the lessons that they've learned, the methods that they use, also share resources, just like in the intercommunal, reactionary intercommunal system. They can trade resources. They can take materials that they're able to generate in surplus and share them with another community so that they're able to receive things that they're not able to produce or access in surplus where they are. We can develop, agricultural co-ops. People are able to grow, farm on, in urban areas. We teach people how to survive and develop programs for survival in different areas and ultimately transform them into dual power. So with that understood, if we were to carry out this struggle, do you all see it as an effective struggle for actually being able to liberate the world, to transform the world from reactionary intercommunalism to revolutionary intercommunalism?
I would say yeah. Sorry, my mom was talking. And briefly, just because when you go to like other countries, you see how valid it is and how fruitful it is for each party, for me as a radical going into another country, and them getting my perspective too. We could use the privileges we got over here with technology to then like propagate the struggles over there. Also, we have even though we're working class over here, we accrue more capital in ways that a dollar could sustain itself much longer in other countries. And I feel like we give them a lot of space and a lot of like sustain in that. So I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we hear you.
Or is it muted? Hello?
We can hear
Yeah, we
you.
can hear you. I can hear you, Congress.
We hear you.
So I was agreeing with that. I think that it can be revolutionizing the world by doing something like that. Simply because you're also planting the seed to change the mindset that I think a lot of people right now, we're in a time where if we use it right, it will help us understand how communal. Sorry, my son. Okay, just go potty. Yes. Yep. I'm sorry. So basically, with doing that, I'm on the phone. Essentially, with doing something like that, I feel that, you can change people's mindset. That's like a huge thing, because right now everybody thinks that the money is like the end all in that. And it's like, if I have a resource and you have a resource, then we can utilize that.
You have 1 minute remaining.
I'm sorry. So I just feel that, there's multiple ways to just work with each other. And once you change the mindset of people, then that'll become easier, because some of us have certain resources that the other person doesn't. And if we share, it does a number of good. And I have a couple of people that I know have resources in the Dominican Republic and have farms of their own, and their family has it. And they come over here, and it's like, if you go back over there, like you said you're going to do, then me and you could have a whole system. It'll be cheaper for you to ship food over here. And, you can work it differently versus these large corporations. Once you connect with people and other cultures and, bring the resources in from other parts of the world. And it feeds them, it feeds you, and it makes a world of difference, I think.
That's a beautiful example. And that's exactly the sort of interconnection that we want to develop in linking different communities together, the resources in different communities, toward helping to develop other communities and help them.
Thank you for using GTL.
He'll be back. I'll pass it to people.
All right, I'll pass it to people. Yeah, so that was a very good a very good point with respect to waking people up, developing people's consciousness of their power, as far as themselves being a resource and not having to depend on money to produce what we need to produce, but also money being an important resource that can be used to the benefit of people, especially in underdeveloped regions, because as Comrade Hansi said, money goes a much longer way in underdeveloped areas. So I think with this understanding, the comrades should be able to see what the importance of a revolutionary intercommunal party is, to awaken the masses, to show the masses or teach the masses the nature of their oppressed conditions and the global nature of it, and how through unifying the struggles of people in different areas and linking them together and exchanging resources and exchanging personnel, people can come from an underdeveloped region into, say, a part of America, and people from America can go to an underdeveloped region, and we can exchange ideas, we can exchange understandings, we can exchange skill sets, we can contribute what we know to develop in other areas, and systematically link it together in a intercommunal culture, in an intercommunal economy, and overall show people how to tie together these institutions that are already linked together intercommunally or on a global scale, and transform them into institutions that become controlled by the people themselves. And let me point something out that I think the comrade touched on, but it's an important point for us to make. Wealth is not the source of people's survival. Labor power is. A lot of us have been conditioned to see the dollar as the source of what's necessary for people to live, when actually the dollar is only a means, or it's only a medium through which we exchange value, but the value actually comes from labor power. People are the source of wealth. People are what make the world go around. People's labor is what makes the world go around. When we bring people together with different skill sets and organize them and structure them to produce food, to produce clothing, to produce shelter, this is the source of human survival, not the dollar. The dollar is simply used as a medium to exchange the resources that are produced through labor. But labor is the source of the wealth that human beings consume and use to survive in the world and in the environment. So by us understanding that people are the source of power, people are the source of wealth, when we show people how to take their labor power and turn it to the benefit of their communities, turn it to the benefit of everyone else, then we extract them from the conditioned mindset that you have to have money to survive. All you need is actually human labor power to survive. So by taking the power of the people and bringing them to a state of consciousness where they understand that unifying their labor power and working together, they can produce everything they need to survive, you strike a blow both psychologically and materially against the existing reactionary intercommunal system, and show people how to become survivors and how to develop programs that can turn wealth and turn power and, awaken their consciousness to being able to control their own resources and their own destinies. Do the comrades agree, or can the comrades see how that operates?
Absolutely. I think that's a really important interjection, too. I appreciate you deepening that point.
All right. Do any comrades have any questions that they would like to ask, or any ideas or thoughts they would like to contribute to the topic?
I don't think you can see the comments, but said, can you go back over the definition of revolutionary intercommunalism versus reactionary intercommunalism? Young comrades are asking.
Okay. Reactionary intercommunalism is the way the system is hooked up now, where there is a global structure where all of the technologies, the wealth, all of the communication systems, etc., are linked together, but they are controlled by a very small group of wealthy people who own and control most of the wealth that is extracted from the overall system. So you have a bunch of communities, systems or societies that exist basically as communities that are linked together through a global net and network of industries and telecommunication systems, etc., that the people do not have control over, but they're all working together, and they're compelled to work together to produce the wealth that is being consumed and owned by a small group of people. Revolutionary intercommunalism, on the other hand, would be where the masses of people take control of this system, and they turn this system over to their own benefit, whereas we're all linked together now as opposed to how things were hooked up, say, 50 years ago. We're all linked together now where we're all tied together. We can all communicate in the fraction of a second globally. Wealth can be transferred from one place to another globally in a fraction of a second. We can order things, we can access resources, we can do everything that used to have to be done manually or by walking somewhere else or driving somewhere to go get it. It can be produced, it can be generated, it can be exchanged and extracted almost instantaneously on a global scale. So this system that is linked together and is able to function in a fraction of a second in so many different layers and levels, seizing control of that and turning it over to the masses and basically booting out of control this small group of people who gain massive amounts of wealth at the expense of everybody else. This is what we aspire to achieve through revolutionary intercommunalism, where the working class and the oppressed masses of people take control of this system and use the system to their benefit, where resources aren't concentrated in one area and denied people who need them in another area simply because it isn't profitable to a small group of people, where people aren't deprived of having access to being able to control their communities, being able to control the resources that come into or leave their communities because it doesn't profit a small group of people, where the masses of people basically take control of this system and use it to the benefit of everyone. That would be revolutionary communalism. Does that help, comrade? Hello, we still on?
Yeah, we're still on. I like to use globalization too, because that's the word you hear a lot in the news. When you turn on the news, they're always talking about globalization, which is nothing more than reactionary intercommunalism. That's what helped it click for me. I don't know if that's helpful for anybody else.
Another two words it would be good to associate, like neoliberalism, and I feel like telemarketers. That's like a good example. Like like what you guys were talking about. It's a good example
basically all
of
these
reactionary.
terms describe the same thing. Yeah. Okay.
Another thing that this makes me think of is like the way that organizations such as like the IMF and the World Bank contribute to this, and contribute to the robbing of sovereignty of nations who rise up against imperialism and colonialism, such as what do you think of like Cuba or DPRK or oppressed nations in Africa. When we think of like the way that politically organizations such as the World Bank and IMF enforce neoliberal, neocolonial policies, if, as was said earlier, if people want to be able to trade and acquire resources on a global stage, that they're forced to accept the policies of neoliberalism and of neocolonial exploitation of their land, of their resources, and of their people, or else they're subject to starvation and isolation, such as Cuba and DPRK and etc.
Yeah, that's basically how it works. Yeah, typically what they impose are called structural adjustment programs. But yeah, that's exactly what we're looking at and what people face, under the domination of the reactionary intercommunalism. And the World Bank and the International Monetary Funds are two of the most dominant institutions in carrying out and imposing this structure on the underdeveloped world. So yeah, anybody else would like to chime in with any thoughts? Does everyone feel they understand what revolutionary intercommunalism is?
Yeah, I definitely think I have a better understanding than before. So, yeah.
Okay, do the comrades see why a revolutionary intercommunal party would be necessary to organize the masses of people to take control of the institutions and resources locally in their communities, coordinate them, from one community to the next, and ultimately be able to overthrow the existing system of reactionary intercommunalism or globalism or neoliberalism as we understand it?
Yes. I think it's actually essential to have such a party because right now, as we know, even in terms of the idea of like everybody saying, okay, well, we have Black owned, but they don't understand the full understanding of the intercommunalism aspects of it. So once you've acquired your own business, it seems as if that's only to feed you and your family, and it doesn't really pour back into the community. It becomes very individualistic and very capitalistic, whereas, intercommunalism, from my understanding currently, is where we're making sure that everybody's good, that everybody, in the communities are able to eat, to feed themselves, to work with each other. And I believe it's very possible. And really, honestly, it's a human component that has to be implemented in the consciousness, and a communal one and a family one. If you have a more of that mentality as well as political understanding what your goal is, whenever you do establish your own business, if you have one, or if you're connecting with other ones, understanding the common goal and the real reason behind it, and having a revolutionary base versus a reactionary one or a very individualistic one. I think, just working with others and sharing resources can be a big deal. I've been kind of doing that little by little as an example, just because I can, experiment with it, because I know that I have, that's one of the things I'm good at, is just kind of I'm very friendly. So right now I do different things where we all can eat. It's my motto, and I do vegan food, but I tell other people with their businesses, you can come and do this vending, and then we're all going to get a piece of this, and then how can we use it for the community and things like that. So we're having an honest system where people don't have to pay this astronomical price for something. What is it they're able to do? What is it? How can I make sure that they have nourishment? How can I make sure they have whatever it is they need? Without putting a dollar amount necessarily on it. And I understand that we need economics, but understanding that too, if we barter, if they have whatever the product is and I have something, how can we exchange that? So now everyone's getting a good versus it always having to be a dollar amount. I shouldn't have to, if I have something that you want, we're going to end up paying this price, anyway. If I give you $40 and you give me $40 worth of product, and then you buy $40 from me, we just exchanged $40, where I could have just gave you the product and you gave me the product and we're both satisfied. So I think, it's just opening the consciousness of people little by little with whatever your basis is, wherever your starting point is, using that as a base if you can.
Good point. All power to the people.
All power.
Could you potentially link the rise of the gig economy over traditional wage jobs to the need for revolutionary intercommunalism?
I caught part of your question. You said something about traditional jobs and revolutionary intercommunalism. Can you repeat your question?
Yeah, I said, could you link the rise of the gig economy and the loss of traditional wage jobs and that movement to the need for revolutionary intercommunalism?
Okay, essentially, with the development of automation, a lot of the traditional jobs, factory jobs, traditional industrial jobs have been destroyed. And because the workers are replaced, the manual laborers, their work is replaced by automation, by machines. So with the growth of automation, you're seeing a systematic loss, especially since the 70s, of massive numbers of people who perform manual labor from, traditional, what's called traditional proletarian jobs. These people have been pushed to the margins. These are a massive amount of the people who have been pushed into urbanized areas, who can't find work, who can't find sustainable, secure work, and means of survival. So they must resort to, a variety of means to just exist from day to day, including, as I pointed out earlier, becoming predatory, or what we call, developing, the lifestyle of the lumpen proletariat, or the criminalized mentality. The response or the answer to that is what we are strategizing to develop, which is the Serve the People programs that will empower the people through collectively contributing to the needs of the community, providing for the basic needs, which was, an idea that was first developed, by the original Black Panther Party under, Huey P. Newton, when he first developed the Serve the People, or what he called survival programs. And it talked to people in the urbanized areas who had been basically conditioned to being competitive, predatory, et cetera. It taught them how to cooperate, how to come out together, how to work together, how to acquire resources, pool their abilities, their labor power, their ability to access different things that could be used to the benefit of the community, and using them to serve the community, which is why they're called Serve the People programs. They were able to feed massive amounts of people. They were able to develop community groceries, health clinics. They started the first sickle cell anemia testing and treatment programs at a time when the government and the existing medical industry didn't care about sickle cell anemia because it was a condition that was, suffered only by Black people. They developed, transportation systems, means of providing security for, seniors. They developed, dozens of community survival or community serve the people programs that taught these urbanized people who didn't otherwise have resources and didn't receive support and assistance from the existing governments and existing economic structure, how to meet their own needs. And this is what we want to take to the next level. Under modern conditions, we need Serve the People programs as much and then more, even more, than, what was needed back in the 60s and 70s. And we can develop these sorts of programs into actual sustainable economic institutions that will serve as dual power in the communities, where we can extract ourselves from depending on the establishment, the established market, et cetera, to, meet our needs and develop these community survival programs into actual programs that become economic infrastructure in the communities, that through which the people can cooperatively and collectively meet their own needs. So by, implementing revolutionary intercommunal principles and socialist principles through a revolutionary intercommunal party, we can take people who have been pushed to the margins, who can't...
You have 1 minute remaining.
Who can't meet their own needs, how to collectively work together to meet their needs and actually transform these programs into institutions of, economic, political, dual power based in the communities and over which they have total control. Does that answer your question, comrade?
Yeah, that answers my question.
Okay. All right, with that, I guess we can wrap things up unless comrades have something else they'd like to contribute. All right, with that, we can wrap up, and I appreciate everybody's contribution and participation. All power to the people.
All power to the people.
All power to the people.
We'll see you all next week.
All power to the people.
I'll see y'all before next week.
Bye, y'all. Thank you for using GTL.